Hello and welcome back to the Be a Better You podcast. I am your host, Allison K. Dagny. For those of you who are just tuning in for the first time and don't know me, I am an abuse survivor of more than 20 years of emotional abuse, and I changed my life through subconscious healing. And that's why I'm here for you today. I mentor women and I help them get out of these toxic cycles. I help them be able to quit the ruminating and start living their life in a way that truly honors their needs, their life, and what they truly want for themselves. So today, I have a special episode for you. This is something that came up because I kept seeing this in clients, and I figured this has got to be something that people hear about. And a lot of times women stay stuck in emotionally abusive relationships for years, and men also, but it's because of this thing called potential, right? Like a lot of times people think that we stay in emotionally abusive relationships, toxic dynamics, because we're somehow too weak to leave, we're stupid, or we are just like stuck in this cycle because of our trauma, like things like that. And though, the trauma aspect is real and does impact it, the part that most people don't realize is that we get stuck in these situations because we believe so much in someone else's potential or hope that they will change. And it's when you start seeing these little glimpses of who somebody could be, and then you emotionally attach yourself to that version of them instead of the person who's standing in front of you, instead of the person who's showing you who they truly are. And this is actually a big reason why people get stuck. So if you're with somebody or you've been in a toxic cycle with somebody, I want you to stay tuned, because you might be looking at this person's potential instead of who they truly are. And if you've been emotionally abused, if you've been emotionally neglected, if you've been hurt, if you've been traumatized in any way, your brain, it starts to get really good at surviving on breadcrumbs. It gets really good at hanging on to the tiniest little bit of hope. And so maybe a good day that you had with this person is like, oh, see, they can be better. Or if they promised you something, it's like, oh, look, they do mean well, or they do mean good for me. Maybe it's they got really vulnerable with you and shared and opened up about something, and you're like, oh, look, yeah, we are getting closer. Even temporary behavior changes in a person starts to look like proof to your brain, okay? And so over time, you're no longer in a relationship with the reality of the person. You're in a relationship with hope of what they could be or hope of what they could become. So today I want to talk about the difference between what healthy hope actually is and emotional attachment to this potential, right? Which is why so many really intelligent women get trapped here. Kind, empathetic women too, because it's like, and I'm going to go into this later, but it's like, I should look for the best in others. I should be able to see the good in them, right? So, but this is how codependency starts to like get its claws in. And then why learning to recognize patterns instead of promises can actually change everything. And I have another episode about this. If you go back to episode 210, why smart people stay in toxic relationships, it will go in deeper as well on that. But I really want to help you with this, especially if you're sitting in this state of confusion of like, maybe you're in the relationship with someone and they keep making promises to change and you see their potential and you're like, they're not actually changing, but they give you breadcrumbs. Should I stay or should I leave, right? Well, this episode is especially for you because this exact issue is one of the biggest reasons that people stay stuck in this emotional limbo for years and years and years and years. Maybe they can change, or maybe they will be better, and then they change for 2 weeks and then go back to the same old thing, or they change for 3 months and go back to the same old thing, okay? So I actually wanted to share something with you guys that I've created, and it's going to be a growing library of courses that you can purchase on my website. The first one that I want to mention is there is a course called Should I Stay or Leave? And it's inside the Emotional Healing Training Lab on my website. So if you are stuck in this position, you can go take this course on your own. It's not going to tell you if you should stay or if you should leave, but it is going to help get you clarity. And that clarity is what's most important, because when you're stuck in a situation like that, it feels very confusing. So it's about learning how to separate, your fantasies from reality, and, really connecting back in with yourself, because most people are trying to make decisions based on words or chemistry or guilt or fear or any sort of emotion, and hope is one of them. But healing, real healing, is about learning how to look at patterns and evaluate those patterns and check the behavior. So honestly, probably for you, and I know me too, most people were never taught how to do that, don't know how to do that, and never have done it. So let's talk about potential first and foremost, because it is one of the hardest truths to accept, that someone's potential doesn't mean that they're capable of reaching it, right? So we often think that if someone has potential, that they should be able to reach that potential, because we see something in them that maybe they don't even see in themselves. But, most women who are emotionally intelligent are very perceptive naturally, right? You can see the wounded parts underneath someone's behavior. You can see their good qualities. You can see the version of them that occasionally shows up as well, okay? But the problem is you start building emotional attachment to who they sometimes are instead of who they consistently are, right? So in emotionally abusive dynamics and relationships, inconsistency is the thing that thrives, right? Like when someone is inconsistent, usually you're looking at an emotionally abusive or toxic dynamic. Consistency is where we have stability. It's where we feel secure. It's where we feel safe, right? That inconsistency is that chaos and then emotional roller coaster that many of us are very familiar with. And if you've never heard me talk about this, if this is the first time listening to your podcast, that familiarity of what we know and what we've experienced in our past is often what we gravitate towards in our relationships in the future. So the thing about inconsistency is it keeps you waiting for that good version of them to come back, right? So it's this up and down roller coaster thing. So when things are low, it keeps you like really hopeful for that good version of them to come back, or the vulnerable aspect of them, or the hopes and promises and whatever's of the future, right? It keeps you kind of waiting for that. Or maybe you're trying to unlock it, or maybe you are being a little encouraging to them. Hey, did you ever think about doing this? Or what about that? Right? And and there's nothing wrong with being encouraging, right? At all. But if you're ignoring the reality and ignoring the patterns of behavior, that's where we get stuck, okay? Because sometimes people believe that if I just love them more, or if I'm just really patient, or if I'm just really understanding, or if I just forgive them or support them or whatever, right? Then that's going to be the thing that makes that person become who they really are in your mind. And that's the potential piece, right? So what's really happening is reality is trying to scream at you. It's saying, look at these behavior patterns. Look at how they keep showing up. Look at what they keep doing. And you aren't seeing it because you're focused on the hope of the future or the potential. So I want you to imagine for a moment someone standing in front of a closed restaurant every single day. And the sign says, opening soon. Okay, so every day they show up hopeful that that restaurant's going to be open. Every day they're waiting for it. And every day they're saying, oh, maybe it's today, right? And occasionally maybe even like the lights flicker inside, or maybe they see somebody back there in the back just to keep them emotionally invested. But the doors are not open. The doors never actually open. And really at some point that like waiting, that continuing to wait over and over and over again doesn't lead to anything concrete. And it's not optimism anymore. It's actually abandoning yourself. Okay? And this is what many emotionally abusive relationships feel like. Quick pause here. If you are listening to this and you're nodding along like, yep, this is me, and you're ready to actually shift this and not just keep managing and coping, you can apply for a free root cause call using the link in the show notes. On that call, we're going to look at where you're at right now, where you want to be emotionally, and start uncovering what is actually in the way. And then I'm going to give you my recommendations and point you in the right direction if any of my programs might feel like a fit. And if it's aligned, we'll move forward. If not, you still leave with some clarity. All right, now let's get back to the episode. Waiting for a relationship that keeps hinting, right? Like the little light flickers or seeing somebody in the back and the sign that's there every day, promising it's going to be open, right? It's like hinting at this existence that really never actually comes to fruition. It never becomes reality. So why do we do this? Well, let's talk about why this happens, because it's deeper than this thing where people say, just leave, just get out of there, just, remove yourself, right? Because we often stay attached to potential for subconscious reasons. And remember, your subconscious is running 95% of the show. Okay, it's running your automatic behaviors, your automatic reactions. Okay, that's where it's coming from, is from your subconscious. So, you don't even realize that this is happening. And that's the work that I do, is I help people rewire those subconscious patterns so that those automatic behaviors can change. Because willpower doesn't work. It may work temporarily for a little while, but ultimately you have to rewire what's driving you, and that's the subconscious. So some of these things might sound like, and this is the subconscious aspect of this, like, well, if I stop believing in them, then that means I'm a bad person. And I want you to listen to these, because you may have had these thoughts in your own mind, right? If I don't give them grace, then I'm cold or uncaring. If I stop hoping, I'm just a negative person, and that's not me. People deserve second chances, and third, and fourth, and fifth, and who knows, however many, right? You insert. Maybe nobody's perfect. Or maybe you think things like, well, what if they're really trying? Or what if I regret leaving too soon? Or what if this is my trauma talking? Or what if I miss out on that potential because I wasn't willing to stick around? Now somebody else is going to benefit from it. What if they can finally change after I leave, and then I was the one that made the mistake, right? So sitting with these things feels really icky. If I can just explain myself better, maybe they'll understand. And if I can just encourage them enough, then maybe they'll make the changes, right? You might even just have this general belief that, like, I need just to think positive. I just need to have hope. Or I shouldn't judge somebody because I know they're struggling and I wouldn't want someone to judge me. So underneath, there could be more, right? There could be so many more. These are ones that I know about, and that for myself personally, and that I have heard women say to me in my coaching programs and in my root cause calls and, right? So underneath a lot of these beliefs is another really painful belief, right? If I stop believing in this person's potential, then I actually have to face reality. That this was all a lie, that they did not have any intentions of changing, that they fooled me again, right? And that can feel really, really devastating, because reality might mean something like, this relationship is actually hurting me and I've been allowing it. And I didn't want to see it because I was so attached to the hope, right? This person may never be who I want them to be, need them to be, hope they could be. So this can be a very brutal grieving process for people. I just want you to be aware of that, because once you start unearthing these things that are going on in your subconscious mind that right now you have no awareness, and maybe this is the first time you're like, oh my gosh, I'm actually hearing myself in these words. I know I have thought these things, or maybe other things, or maybe it's sparking ideas in your mind. This is the grieving process, because it's not just the loss of the person, it's the loss of the fantasy, or it's the loss of the dream of what you thought they could be, or what you thought the relationship could be. And that it can be a very painful thing to go through. So I want to shift over to this hope versus reality thing, because hope itself is not unhealthy, okay? Hope says something like, I would love for this person to be the best version of themselves. I want everybody to have growth. I want people to be at their potential, right? That's not a bad thing, okay? But when you're grounded in reality, hope also says, until consistent patterns can show me real change, I must respond to reality. Okay? Until consistent patterns show me real change, I must respond to reality. That is the difference. Okay? That second one is emotionally grounded. Okay? The other one is emotional survival, right? Oh, I just hope they would change. I just really wish that they could be better, and I know they can, right? And if you've been emotionally abused, you might confuse these two things because they were conditioned in you to override reality in order to preserve attachment. So if you look at reality and you know reality is not serving you, not helping you, hurting you in many ways, draining you emotionally, financially, mentally, whatever, right? You override that reality because you want to preserve the attachment and you want to preserve the fantasy of what could be, okay? And I just did air quotes, what could be, because you don't really know. You just think that that is, what this person could be. And so this is also why I teach my clients to stop overvaluing words and promises and start looking at patterns, start observing patterns of behavior, because patterns are what tell the truth, not those apologies and the promises and, their emotional breakthroughs or speeches that they give you about change and future faking and all these things, right? No, patterns of behavior is what really we need to latch on to. And that's scary because when you look at the real patterns of behavior, they don't lie. Like if you actually look at the patterns of behavior, it's like, oh my gosh, should I stay or should I leave? You probably have your answer, right? So does the behavior consistently change over time? Like beyond 3 months, 6 months, a year, right? Are they taking accountability without shifting blame onto you? Are they being an emotionally safe person? Are they aligning their actions with their words? If they say they do something, do they do it? Do they respect your boundaries if you're uncomfortable or if you're struggling or if you're sharing? Can they tolerate your emotions without either punishing you for them or dismissing them or telling you that you're too much or whatever, right? This is the part that matters. That is the part that really matters, okay? The patterns, that's what you have to start to look at. And most people don't. Most people don't look at those patterns. They look at the potential. They look at, what could be, and they live in the fantasy of what could be instead of actually rooting in reality of what's happened, okay? Now, there's a nervous system piece about this that I must talk about, and the reason that most people are staying attached to potential is because their nervous system is addicted to that hope, or addicted to the fantasy, or addicted to the anticipation of what could be. And I've got the could in air quotes again, because you don't know. You just think that, and you probably hope that is how it is or should be. So you end up waiting and you end up hoping, and you get relief after they do something that makes you feel better, like apologize or did something nice for you, right? So you're stuck in this emotional high and low imbalance, and that cycle creates this intensity that often gets mistaken for love, depth, or connection. And I talk about this on another episode about chemistry, which was just a few weeks ago, was episode 215, about chemistry isn't always a green flag, especially after abuse. So maybe you're already out of a relationship and you are wanting to get back in the dating. Well, like, this can also be mistaken, this intensity, for love or depth or connection, right? Because if you're familiar with that cycle and you jump into a new relationship or you start dating, it's going to feel the same. Okay? But real stability, real like steady, safe love and connection is never built on emotional unpredictability. Okay? So if you cannot predict something, you're not going to feel as safe. I mean, this is just human nature. We look for patterns of behavior. We try to connect the dots of things. We try to say, oh, this person never shows up for me, so they probably aren't going to show up this time either, right? But when we're in this cycle, we are clinging to hope for whatever reason that is, for something that's it's serving us in some way, right? Then we get stuck in this loop of like, it's almost like an addictive cycle where we aren't feeling the ways that we want to feel, and we are disappointed in someone's behavior or how they're acting, or they are letting us down, or the expectations aren't being met. And then all of a sudden something happens, and then it's like, oh, look. And we latch onto that because it's like, this could be it. They could actually be making changes. Look. And we want to see the good. Okay. And again, your nervous system gets stuck in this cycle. It gets stuck in like hoping for that dopamine hit. Okay. So I want to leave you with this on this one section. You should not need to figure out or become a detective to determine if someone loves you or not. You should know it based on the patterns of behavior. And if you're like, oh, they're treating me so bad, but then they're really good. And oh, they're treating me so bad, but then they're really good. Right? It's like, let's go back to the cycles of abuse. Let's go back to the nervous system and how your nervous system is responding to that, and reminding yourself that if it's not steady and consistent. Now, I have to say this. I'm not saying people don't have arguments in relationships or that there's not issues. There are, right? That happens. But we're not talking about these occasional things. We're talking about patterns of behavior. Okay? So you should not need to become a detective to figure out if somebody loves you. Okay. So I think one of the hardest parts of healing from emotional abuse is realizing that you can really deeply understand someone, but also need distance from them, or maybe even not be in a relationship with someone like that. Compassion for someone else does not require you to abandon yourself. And I think a lot of people are doing this. They're saying, oh, well, they could be better. Oh, they had trauma. Oh, I can see their potential, all the stuff. And then you end up abandoning yourself in the process. You allow yourself to be mistreated because you're focused on the potential, the hope, or the fantasy. Okay? And I think this is really important to be said, because even if you can recognize these patterns, even if you know what's happening and you see their pattern of behavior is, like, this is actually, okay, Allison, I hear you, and I'm looking back at the behavior patterns and it's not good, right? That doesn't mean you're cynical or pessimistic or a negative person, right? It is you being honest with yourself. That is the key. You have to be honest with yourself. And there's a difference, right, between supporting someone's growth and their self-development and things like that, if that's really what they want, and then building your entire life around just waiting for them to change. Like that is different, right? Like if somebody is like really committed to changing and really working hard, and they're going to therapy or having coaching sessions and they're making changes and you can see it, right? Versus just like holding your breath, crossing your fingers, and blowing out a birthday cake candle and wishing that they will actually change. That's very different. Two very different things. So, at some point, healing these kinds of wounds is going to ask you a very uncomfortable question. And I'm going to tell you what that is. Are you loving who they are, or are you loving who you hope they will eventually become? Because those two things are very different. Okay? And the relationships are stark, right? Are you loving who they are now, or are you loving who you hope they will become? And one of these things exists mostly in your mind. And again, this is the work that I do. I help people figure out, what is it that you're believing? What is it that you're expecting? What are the shoulds that you feel like are happening? Are these rooted in reality, or are these rooted in your imagination? Because most of it is in your mind. So if this episode hit home for you and you are still struggling with this confusion, whether you're in the relationship, whether you're out of it and you're still ruminating about things, you're wondering, am I seeing reality clearly, or am I just surviving on this hope of what I think should be or could be, or their potential, or the potential of our relationship, or how amazing our life could be together, right? I'd love for you to check out my emotional healing training lab on my website. Just go to radiateandrise.com. It's radiate, the letter N, rise.com. And then in the menu, there's a drop down that says Emotional Healing Training Lab. That course inside there, Should I Stay or Leave, is especially designed to help you separate your emotional attachment, your fear, your guilt, the familiarity stuff from your trauma, and hope and potential from actual relationship patterns and emotional safety, because that is important. So I want you to have that clarity, right? I'm never going to tell you if you should stay or if you should leave. I never tell my clients that. Now, if they're in an unsafe situation, of course, I would say, like, this is unsafe, you need to get out of there, right? That sort of thing. But like, if you're in this like confused area, you need clarity, right? You need somebody to say, here's what's happening, here's what you're thinking, right? And we unearth all that stuff in your sessions with me, like if we were working together, and then we bring it to the surface, and then we change those subconscious patterns so that you can lead with clarity and make a decision instead of being emotionally attached to something that isn't real. Because clarity and focus does not come from just thinking about things more, right? That's rumination, and that gets you stuck in a whole other whirlwind of problems. Right? The clarity that you need is going to come from learning how to see clearly. And how do you do that? One, you have to get into your nervous system. You have to get calm. You have to figure out what's in your subconscious mind, why you're resisting letting go of these things, why you resist believing that maybe they're not going to change, right? Because it benefits you somehow. And these are things that are going to be unique to everyone. Everyone's circumstance is different. And then when you start getting to the root of it, then you can actually see clearly, instead of just believing in potential and fantasy. Okay, thank you so much for being here with me today. Seriously, I know these conversations can feel really uncomfortable because I'm asking you to take a look at things that you might have spent years trying to explain away or justify or minimize, or, like I said, hold on to hope for the future. But that honesty with yourself is part of healing. And you deserve that kind of healing. So today we talked about the difference between loving someone and becoming emotionally attached to their potential, how easy it is to confuse these occasional good moments and promises and all these temporary change with actual patterns that are real, like concrete, tangible evidence to who somebody is. We talked about why emotionally intelligent women tend to stay stuck in these cycles longer than they should, right? Because you're so empathetic, you're hopeful, you are loyal, you want to help people, you love people, right? But often are subconsciously terrified that letting go means that you're cold or bitter or jaded or giving up, right? Or you're going to miss out. So what my hope is, right? I hope that this episode helped you see that recognizing reality does not make you a bad person or cruel or unkind or uncaring or anything like that. It makes you emotionally grounded and emotionally mature. And you're allowed to stop building your future around someone else's potential. Okay? You're allowed to look at patterns instead of promises. You're allowed to prioritize your emotional safety. You're allowed to trust yourself. And if you're realizing that you do need deeper support with this and navigating healing around this, I would love to invite you to either apply for that root cause call from my website, or you can check out my self-paced online courses inside the Emotional Healing Training Lab on my website. And that root cause call is where we're going to look beneath the surface, figure out what's the pattern, what's keeping you emotionally stuck, look at your subconscious beliefs and things like that, and see what's actually driving your pain and confusion. And if you're somebody who prefers to move at your own pace, those courses are for that. They're for people who aren't ready for one-on-one, people who just want to kind of figure this out on their own, and that is fine. I've been there. I understand that phase, and that's why I have these courses for you out there. So that should I stay or should I leave one, it is intended to help you get that clarity. So everything is going to be linked in the show notes below. And as always, thank you for spending this time with me. I know your time and emotional energy are so important, and I appreciate you sharing it with me. So I'll talk to you next week.